cool. Well, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much. I love your story.
And you, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So let's begin our journey into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, our world was completely getting rearranged with COVID.
Mhm.
How did you ultimately survive the pandemic of 2020, and how has it reverberated into your world today?
COVID basically provided me a platform to completely change my path. I had worked in the corporate world. I was a sales leader within a technology company, and I was actually made redundant during COVID. Now, I hadn't been very happy in that job anyway, but I had went through, my spiritual awakening. I had developed all of these spiritual gifts, and I was still gripping on to my old life, essentially, resisting any change. I liked the comfort of my good salary and everything else. So I lost my job the week that COVID hit,
Wow.
and I ended up having a cancer diagnosis. That same, it was actually my second cancer diagnosis that, like about a couple of weeks later. And it sort of made the decision for me that I was going to completely focus on my new career path and throw myself into that. And that was using my spiritual gifts. And I got myself on TikTok and I started putting different bits of content out. And 6 months in, I had went viral and my calendar was booked for the
Wow.
next 3 weeks.
Wow.
So COVID changed my life for the better.
Wow, that's amazing. I hear that so much. Like, of all of the woe and bad that was happening, when I talk on an individual basis, there's so many people that found such a sea change in their existence during that
Yeah.
time.
The thing is, though, whenever we're in the midst of it, we don't want to experience it, do we? Because it's hard and
Yeah.
we're having our comforts stripped away from us, like our financial protection, all of the comforts of our salary, maybe the nice car, all of those home comforts. And whenever all of that's stripped away from us in the time, in the moment, it's horrendous. But actually, it provides us with an opportunity to change. It's like a pause to reflect and redirect. And eventually we end up in a much better place than what we were in the first place.
So let me ask you this. There's a host of titles that you have, but if we wanted to boil this down to something that 12-year-olds would understand, as you stood in front of them at a career day, and the kid in the
Yeah.
back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's
hmm
your answer?
I would say that I'm a prophet and I talk to God and I bring wisdom through about things that are going to happen or things that we need to do in order to live a better life. And that's what I do. And I tell people.
So this is my question before we get into how you um how you got to this place in your life. I want to know first and foremost, take me back to when you were 12. What was your dream job? What did you want to be?
I wanted to be a hairdresser.
Okay. Did you do that?
I actually went to hairdressing school,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't end up doing that as a career. The thing is that my mind seems to be really wired to do big things. I couldn't have just worked in a salon. I wanted to have a chain. I wanted to have like the multinational, you know, chain of salons that I was running. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what I wanted to do.
So talk to me a little bit about growing up. Did you have spiritual experiences? How did you evolve to this place where
Yeah.
you're a seer and a prophet? How did this happen?
So I didn't have any real major spiritual experiences as a child. We didn't really go to church or believe in God. I went to Sunday school whenever I was very young, but I didn't come from a family of believers. I hadn't really had many spiritual experiences at the time that I would have thought were spiritual experiences. There were times whenever I knew things as a child that I shouldn't have known, but nobody really bat an eyelid. They were few and far between. And it was only whenever I went through most of my adult life not believing in God or anything like that either. And I had a really transformative week. Me and my ex-husband, my daughter's dad, we decided to separate. I was in the process of moving out of the family home and I just signed a lease somewhere. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer all week and a half. So it was that sent me into this process of this period of like questioning, how did I end up here? Why am I still in a career that I hate? how am I, my relationships never really work. I always seem to leave and want something different, and I'm the common denominator here. So it was the thing that really triggered me to go on this self-exploration, to figure things out, to try and figure myself out, really.
Yeah.
And it was that started to trigger a lot of spiritual experiences for me. And it started off like a lot of synchronicities. I would think something and then it would happen, but there would be a lot of it that would happen in a really short space of time.
Yeah.
And it was just making me think like, wow, something's going on here.
You
And
know,
that
I
was,
I hear a lot from people that are mediums and that have this level of spiritual transcendence, so to speak, that say that it's possible for anybody. It all depends
yeah.
on how you open your brain up. So, was it a part of you having to mentally almost exercise yourself to get to a relaxed space to let it in?
Yeah, very much so. So I didn't start having visions and things straight away. I had to work in order to be able to receive things like that. I knew that I had a spiritual presence around me. I started to sense energy changes. I kept being told by other people that I was clairvoyant, that I had the gift of vision. And it was that actually sent me down the path of psychic mediumship first before I sort of stepped into my role as a prophet. But I had to work really hard to get that. I was meditating every day. I was going to a development group where, everybody was practicing and I was receiving support from other people that were already doing that job. I went and I bought myself some cards, like tarot cards and oracle cards, and I would have been using those probably obsessively, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So every day, like that was my focus. I just threw myself into wanting to develop this and to figure it out. And it just started to happen gradually. And then one day it was like the lights were turned on and everything started to really flood in.
Did you have any premonitions of this early on in your life that this was going to become an ability that you would come up with any no notions? It
No. And
literally
in fact, I actually went to see a clairvoyant. I was grown up, my daughter was just born, and she said to me that I was a clairvoyant. And I was like, what a load of rubbish. There's no way I don't have this gift. There was nothing at all in my life that gave me or any of my family the inclination that this is something that I was going to end up doing. I always felt that I was going to do something really significant, but
yeah.
I didn't know anything about what that would be.
That has to be absolutely reassuring because all of us live our lives wanting to find the ultimate meaning or our place or what we're supposed to do. How much of that was a relief that you finally got that level of assurance?
Very much so, because what I have actually found on my path is that as I have evolved, I've almost evolved out of the things that really brought me joy for a period. So I had really loved my corporate career. I started off as a recruiter and a headhunter, and I loved that at the start. And then as I became more embedded in the material world, I just started to feel less and less satisfaction with it. And then whenever I discovered my gift, it was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was doing one-to-one sessions with people and getting all of this amazing feedback, and I was earning lots of money. But then eventually I really grew out of that as well. And I was feeling like I don't want to do one-to-ones anymore. They were draining me. I want to be talking to larger groups of people. So yes, there's an amazing, relief that comes from knowing that you have a purpose and knowing that you're able to do that and feel the level of fulfillment that we feel whenever we do that. But at the same time, it's scary to do something that's so left field. It's not your typical corporate job. I have basically had to immerse myself in so many things that were new to me and that weren't particularly accepted within many social circles, and particularly with my family as well. We're not a family that believe in spiritual stuff and God and spiritual gifts. So I've had to really push myself to accept myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I've been so like worried about, well, what would they think? What would my family think? What will people think that have known me in the corporate world? So it sort of creates this barrier. But once you start to forget everything else about ruffling other people's feathers or treading on their toes, it's much easier. So yes, it is a massive relief to answer your question in short.
And you're also, for all intents and purposes, an entrepreneur. You're in control of your own destiny. That has
Yeah.
to feel relieving because when you work for a company, you just don't know. I mean, you're contributing to something that you're never going to see the fruits of in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. So
Yeah.
was that also a level of relief that you're in control?
Yes, in a way. So I had run my own company before. I had my own recruitment firm
Yeah.
for a few years. So that was the scariest thing the first time that you did it because it feels it feels scary going from working from for someone else to then all of a sudden being in charge of your own destiny because you've had the safety and security of the wage coming in, like that salary. Whenever I did it this time, I didn't have the same level fear. I don't fear now if I'm going to earn money or not. I don't worry about where my money's coming from, but I'm also excited that I'm not being restricted by anyone else either, and I'm not having to march to the beat of someone else's drum. I like that I can orchestrate things myself, but the faith that I have is what helps me continue to get up every day and not worry about how I'm going to pay my bills or how I'm going to pay my mortgage or feed myself, because I know that something will always turn up until the right time comes for something bigger to come. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So even through the tough times, I have this faith that everything will be fine. And
Sure.
then in the good times, I sometimes need to have my ego curtailed, as we all do, to bring me back down to earth. But yeah, it's brilliant having the ability to just do your own thing, without a doubt.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. The one thing you have this, and I would say it's a gift, it's an ability to see spirits, to see
Mhm.
things that most of us don't see. Has there been anything on this journey that totally freaked you out where you had to close the door and be like, that was a lot?
So one night before I was due to have surgery, this was years ago. I was laying in bed and it was pitch black, and all I kept hearing over and over again was second coming, rapture, all of these terms that I would have heard but didn't really necessarily understand what they meant. And it was much louder than what I would normally hear, the spiritual communication, and it was on repeat. I actually thought that I was having some sort of a psychotic breakdown, and only for a friend of mine messaging me and saying, "Oh, I keep hearing second coming and rapture and whatever else." And she says, "I know that we haven't spoke about that before." And I was just so relieved that it wasn't in my head, like, that I wasn't just imagining it. That was really scary. That
Yeah.
was really scary because it was a new experience for me, and it's dark. It's like, is the boogeyman going to
Yeah.
come from under the bed and
Yeah.
nibble at my toes?
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me
But
ask you,
that's the worst thing that I've
yeah.
had.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine so. So let me ask you this. Of On this path of finding your way and finding your purpose, there's been all these people that come into our lives. Who has been that ultimate inspirational heroic force that's allowed you to become you?
It's going to sound really strange. Chester Bennington, who is the lead singer of Linkin Park,
Oh, yeah.
and I know that you're asking like what physical person,
Yeah.
but he came through to me the day that the universe turned the lights on this gift, and everything started flooding in. He was one of the first people that came to me, and I was never a Linkin Park fan, and he was with me every day for 3 or 4 years, helping me overcome my personal challenges of stepping out and embracing my path and helping me strip away the things within my own mind, like my personal limitations, in order to help me actually break through those and really embrace my path. So probably not the answer you were expecting, but the biggest influence on my life has been Chester, without a doubt.
I saw a viral clip of him. He hopped down off stage, and there was a special needs girl that was in a wheelchair.
I've
Yeah, you've
seen that.
seen that. And I also read an article years ago. I'm an IT technician for a school district. My previous director showed me an article that was in Wired. His accounts got hijacked, and it was kind of the dangers of having the same password for everything. And it was a real big shapeshifter for his life. And I remember that
Yeah.
article and how much it rocked his foundation because people got in and just started getting into everything. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting.
So,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this. Right now, if you can meet a guru, if you could meet a prophet,
Hmm.
if you can meet somebody that's alive, a Desmond Tutu, a Dalai Lama, somebody that radiates a real, true spiritual light that might help you on your journey of understanding and
Hmm.
getting to a better place, who would that be?
Sadhguru, I would say. I
Okay.
find him fascinating. I think he would be an amazing person to meet. He's a yogi and, spiritual, and he has some amazing wisdom. I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says or believes, but he would be a very interesting one.
How have you found balance between, you're an entrepreneur, you're helping people, but you also have a soul, you have a life, you have
Yeah.
things that you need to take care of. How has that philosophy worked for you with balance? How does that work?
It's very, very interesting because I'm writing a book on that at the minute.
Okay.
I used to be a workaholic. I used to use work in order to avoid things in my own life. And I also had a tendency to overgive and overnurture when it came to other people. And especially whenever I've been having private sessions with people and bringing through predictions and things about their life, or bringing really sensitive information through, maybe that their partner's having an affair or something like that, it's very easy to get drawn into stuff like that, which takes you away from the things in your own life where you should be focusing on, to have that balance and to still have your own life. It's definitely been something that hasn't been easy for me to learn,
Yeah.
but I would say that I'm mastering that at the minute, like putting the finishing touches on mastering it. Little and often is always what I'm told. Like, do a little bit of everything. Just, clean one room in the house, put one load of laundry on today, cook one meal, record one video for YouTube. I before would have, and I think so many of us have got this lifestyle where we're trapped in these jobs where we're working maybe 40, 50 hours a week and then trying to fit things in around it. And I'm so lucky and privileged that I don't have to stay so rigid to that anymore. So it's always trying to just fit a little bit of everything and everything in moderation. I say walking the middle path. But that's what I aim to do with everything. And not every day works like that. There's some things that I really try to prioritize, like getting out into nature, moving my body, drinking lots of water. I'll try and obviously record some content. Some days I don't want to record content. Some days I don't want to go for a walk,
Yeah.
but I try and do everything, a little bit of everything every day.
So, dealing with the spiritual world and the other side, there's a lot of heavy things that can happen. How do you protect yourself? How do you get yourself to a point where things don't go south?
I've never really had a lot of experiences that have caused me to try and to cause me to need to protect myself, if I'm being
Okay.
honest.
Yeah.
I know that there's people out there that talk about putting a golden bubble of light around you and wearing certain crystals, saying a prayer. I've never really been bothered by heavy energy in that way, and I don't know why. I think everybody's experience with it is different, but it's not something that I've had to really think of that often. If I'm connecting to somebody, if I was doing a private session with someone and their energy was really tugging at mine, I might visualize a white light behind, around my body, and, do things to try and lift my energy up and visualize maybe disconnecting from their energy. But mostly it's just never a challenge that I've had.
I remember growing up, there was a friend that had an Ouija board, and that freaked me out. How dangerous is the Ouija board?
I personally think that it's all to do with your intention behind it.
Gotcha.
I went on a ghost hunt a few years ago. In fact, it was probably a year, probably only about a year ago. And as part of the ghost hunt, we did an Ouija board, and that was my first time ever doing an Ouija board. Now, I wouldn't be scared of things like that because it's just another tool and another way to connect with the spirit realm. I'm sure bad things can happen, with anything in life. There is light, there is dark. For me, because I've done tarot cards and I have this gift where I'm connecting and talking to different people, I've never felt scared at the thoughts of doing an Ouija board. I think I would have felt quite scared when I was younger because
Yeah.
it's the unknown and you hear all these scary things about it. But maybe I've just been very protected from all of the negative things. But I think really it's a lot to do with your intentions behind it. It's the same with doing any sort of cards or anything. It's what are your intentions? That's going to dictate what you get out of it.
I think that's a great answer. In a metaphor way, it's almost like AI. What is our intention as human beings? When we pontificate and think about how it can go bad and how it can turn into something destructive, I think somebody at one point told me all AI does is it's a reflection of humans and humanity. And if
Hmm.
humanity tends to be dark and weird, it's going to get there. But if we
Yeah.
have the best intentions, we go into Chat GPT and we want things that's going to be for a beneficial way. That's the whole idea of AI is that it's this incubator of collecting information from human beings. That's all it is. It's
Yeah.
spitting out a more detailed report that you don't have to do. You
Yeah.
don't have to do the legwork.
It's just another form of consciousness.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
pretty amazing.
Yeah,
One of the things that Chester really taught me over the years is that our mind is one of the most powerful tools that we possess. So if we think negative, we will get negative. We will align ourselves with something that's more negative or unfavorable. If we think positive and we open ourselves up to the possibilities of, whatever good things could potentially come to us, then we will attract more positive opportunities.
yeah,
Tell you recently, so I've obviously been going through this, for years, like that, I've been put into situations that has really tested my faith and tested my resilience as a person, tested my ability to remain positive in negative situations because it does have such a big impact on your life. And recently, I have had my third recurrence of cancer. So my breast cancer has come back for a third time. It's a pain in the backside.
yeah,
And I had a CT scan and it's actually spread to a few different parts of my body, which typically in the medical world, the doctors will say, well, this is incurable. You're going to have cancer for life. We're just going to try and keep you alive for as long as we can. But I felt unfazed almost whenever I was given that information because I thought, well, God is going to take care of me.
mhm,
Everything will be fine. And actually then what I was told was that my cancer would be cured. I was just told God will take your cancer off you. Just keep moving down this path, but it's not a permanent thing that you're going to have to experience. And I do wonder, would that have happened if I had went into an emotional spiral?
yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I ran into a guy. I'll never forget this. I used to live in a house where we'd have these garage sales, these citywide garage sales, and I'm a visual artist. This is one of mine behind me. So I'd always put out artwork and I would just put out a tip jar. Whatever you want
Uh-huh.
to tip, get original artwork. And I have a whole bunch out there. I remember one morning a guy came up to me. We both had a weeping willow and we both would talk about it. It was just a shared thing. And he
Uh-huh.
was telling me one time about someone he knew that had cancer, and it was the power of their mentality, the power of their thought. And he told me this whole thing, and I'll never forget it. And he was like, they got over it. It was this power of positivity. And it's
Hmm.
amazing how many things and how many times I will hear stories like this
Yeah.
where things get eradicated because of that.
Well, I had another spiritual awakening at the end of last year, and I was felt like it was in a really dark place, and I was crying and shifting a lot of these emotions. I'd only just really started to come out of that emotionally and feel good whenever I found out that my cancer was back and then found out that it had spread. And, I actually think that I was being prepared for it. And I don't know what God's intentions are, whether He's going to use me as an example of this is what you can achieve when you keep positive. You can rid yourself of your cancer, whether it's going to be some miracle, I don't know. But the power of our minds
Yep.
should not be underestimated by
Yeah.
any stretch. So your mind can dictate the sort of life that you have. It can cause you to get ill and it can cause you to be cured.
Sure.
My family are really struggling with my diagnosis because they're like, oh my God, has she got 5 years left, 4 years, who knows? And I'm not worried in the slightest because I'm like, but God has said He's going to cure me. But of course, they don't have the same faith as me. They don't believe. So they're just, crying into their cornflakes every day and
Yeah.
panicking and worrying for me. And I'm like, honestly, I'm fine. Everything
Yeah.
is going to be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's it. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and ran into that version of you before your spiritual awakening, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life, the revelations, the evolution that you've gone through, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
To stop worrying about things. We spend so much of our life worrying about, paying for stuff, worrying about finances, worrying about, where the job promotion is going to come from. Just enjoy things, follow your heart, do what you actually feel drawn to do, do the things that excite you. You don't need to know everything, how everything is going to happen and how things will fall into place. Because when you follow your heart and do the things that are going to excite you and stop worrying about the outcomes of everything, life is so much more enjoyable and you just seem to magnetize everything that you've ever wanted. Everything that you've wanted just seems to come to you like that.
So let me ask you this, dealing with humans and our issues and all of these things, even in a spiritual sense, can get pretty heavy. Um, So let's say you walked into a room and all of the clients and even everybody that knew you from a corporate sense, you walk into a room and go up to a podium and you could tell them one fun story about you, something that would humanize you. The first
Mhm.
concert that you went to, jumping out of an airplane, some kind of fun adventure, a magical place you traveled to, something like that. What would be a fun story that you could tell that room of people?
Does it have to be fun or can it be
No,
embarrassing?
yeah, it can be anything because embarrassing can be
Oh
fun.
my gosh. Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think now of all of the fun things. Isn't that crazy how your mind just goes blank whenever you're on the spot?
Well, this is the
With all
thing.
of these. Oh,
Chester was a big influence. You obviously love music, right?
yeah. I
What
do love music, yeah.
what was the first concert you ever went to? What was the
Oh.
first moving concert moment you had?
My very first concert I went to as a kid, it was a band called Take That, a British band.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of them before. The one of the singers in that band was Robbie Williams, who had a
Yes.
movie, the Monkey
Yeah.
movie. That was the first band that I went to see.
So
That
they
was
had
the
a
first
they have a
concert I
show.
went to.
Yeah, that's amazing. And they had a show on Netflix about him having a panic attack before he went on stage.
Yeah,
Did you see that?
I seen the show. Yeah,
That's terrifying. I mean, just like,
yeah.
and he kind of went through it and tried to go through the motions.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done in your life, everything you've evolved into at this point, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
The proudest thing I am, is of who I've become.
Yeah,
Like that is the biggest thing, the growth that I've actually achieved as a person and how I've got to this place where I have all of this wisdom and knowledge that I'm able to share with other people and make their lives easier. I have had so many challenges and times in life where things were so hard. Life gets really, really hard,
yeah,
and it doesn't have to be as hard. But that is absolutely one of the big things. And I think as well the effort that I have put in to developing my spiritual gift and taking it seriously as well. I didn't just rock up on TikTok without, having sharpened my skill set and polishing myself. I've always made effort. I've made constant and consistent effort to always be improving and learning from the experiences that I've done so I can be the best for the people that need to hear, whatever it is that's coming out of my mouth. And I think that that's a really important thing. I'm really proud that I have become as good as what I have.
yeah. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that sees you on TikTok that gets immersed in your writing, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
It's a very interesting question. So, I think who I think I am now is very different to who I used to be. I
Yeah,
think I'm very nurturing. I think I have a lot of wisdom, a more life wisdom than what I realized that I had. And I think that I'm a very tough cookie, sometimes to my detriment. I am a little Miss Independent. I don't need no man, which I've been trying to break out of as well, so I can let people into my life. And I'm starting to realize that I give a lot to people, and it's okay to actually accept stuff in return. So
yeah.
that's how I see me.
So if anyone wants to reach out, they want to hire you, they want to indulge in any of the different mediums from writing to TikToks, all of that, where do they go?
YouTube. I'm really focusing on YouTube at the
Okay.
moment. I've got loads of prophecies that I'm putting on there at the minute. TikTok is my biggest channel, really, and I post my shorts and my little reels out there. Instagram, and I also write on Substack every week as well.
Okay.
I have my book. I have my book on Amazon, which is Wisdom Proverbs for Today, and my website is gemmalonsdale.guru.
Okay. I will put all of that in the show notes. This has been wonderful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story.
Thank you very much for having me. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.